Ready, Doug?
Ready.
I'm glad that I could finally lasso you in.
I'm glad to be here.
Are you really?
I am. I love it.
Are you wondering what angle I'm going to come from?
I have no idea, and I'm not worried.
You know, your phone's right there, and there's lots of phone numbers in there.
There are lots of phone numbers in there.
Lots of phone numbers. I've been known to really pull some strings to get what I want in this life. Welcome to the Carrie Cross Show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, bud. I'm so excited. And I also have Dougie Fresh teed up because we are going to throw some lyrics down.
I listened to Lottie Dottie on the way over here, so
Did you?
Good. I did on Spotify. I'm
like
good.
You're a man that prepares for things, right? Oh my God, that does not. And you know, it's funny. I practiced too, but do you know all the words?
No, I realized that I don't. I thought I did.
I don't know hardly any of the words, so we're going to have to use a crutch.
Okay.
No big deal. So what did you think about Joe talking shit about you, by the way? Let's just start with that. Do you think he could really kick your ass?
Well, he's a large person. I mean, he's a strong man. Mm-hmm. He definitely doesn't enjoy me standing over him every day. And that's clear because it comes up a lot. And so I feel like it needs to go deeper. I feel like it's just scratching the surface.
I was hoping we could get to kind of a subconscious root of that because, he wanted to kind of glaze over it, but I'm thinking, well, Joe, I think you really don't like being dominated by Doug. But that's really the role. That's really what it is right now. Okay. So he can stand over you and he can eat chips all he wants.
Yeah. We actually, this morning, we had a leftover bag from Chipotle yesterday in the office, and I had a few this morning, but he wasn't sitting at his desk, so he didn't hear the crunch. But it's kind of weird. I mean, I love Joe, but now that I know that it's sort of annoying to him, it's sort of
you want to crunch even slower.
It has to keep going.
You want to crunch even slower, and you want to bring in more like tortilla bags. I 100% agree with you on that. Okay,
but he by the way, he was polishing off a leftover bag of mixed caramel cheese popcorn yesterday that was sitting on the counter for like weeks.
You know how good that is, though? The sweet and the savory. I'm with him on that.
I don't know.
I'm with him. Well, because you're a germaphobe. Well, according to Joe.
100%.
He let the cat out of the bag.
Listen, the best thing about the pandemic was people washed their hands down.
And you didn't have to exchange any germs. So what about Joe, though? So what's he's got to have something that he does that's like grates on you just a little bit. There's got to be something in there.
You know, he's quiet in the way that he sort of operates, and so there's nothing that stands out, but he's just so consistently like dependable, and tries to sort of be sort of that quiet, like serious, that sometimes it gets on my nerves.
Yeah, and you know what he's doing. He's data collecting. He's got a Doug file up there, and he's secretly, silently just collecting data. That's what he's doing while he just slowly eats his 10-day-old.
He's tucking
popcorn,
it away. He look. I mean, he and I are basically exact opposites, which is awesome.
Well, it's a yin to the yang.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's so good. It's so good. Exactly. So, Doug, I know more about you than I should. Like sometimes I feel like a weird stalker when I'm getting ready to interview because I'm so I just get so into it. So you were really going to be a teacher.
Yep.
And that's so interesting to me.
Yeah.
So ever since you were little, you're like, I want to be a teacher. This is what I'm doing. And then cancer completely changed the course of your professional career.
Yeah. I don't know that I wanted to be a teacher when I was like 5 or 10.
Yeah.
But I love being around young people. And I loved coaching soccer. And so I would work camps in the summer and work with 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds, whatever. And so that led me to want to teach and want to be around the energy that kids bring. And so even after being diagnosed with cancer, I still finished that part of my degree and I did my student teaching. I taught 7th grade in Seekonk, Massachusetts, right across the Rhode Island border. I'll never forget Bob Sensabella was my mentor in 7th grade history and social studies. And it was awesome. And so it's something that I've always sort of had a passion for.
I like you more now. Like I liked you before, but I like that element that was sort of what you were that you naturally had a propensity toward. I think it says a lot. There's something else I really like too. So you get diagnosed with cancer when you're in college. And, kids in college are just so we're all self-absorbed, let's be honest, but you're real self-absorbed in college. And that had to be just the craziest, most extraordinarily isolating, scary experience for someone in that, of that age. But then you were cognizant of the fact that there wasn't support. So if I feel this way at this age, having cancer, what do other people like me feel like? And so in the throes of going through that as a college student, you had the wherewithal to be like, what are other people going through and how do I help? Where does that come? I think that's pretty extraordinary.
Well, thank you. I mean, at the moment, you don't think that. You're just trying to figure out a path forward.
Yeah.
And, I mean, a lot of that came from my parents, for sure. They just always instilled the belief that, like, you got to give back and if you see a void in society, you should fill it and not wait for somebody else. I think it was anecdotal. It was just our own experience. And we thought, gosh, other people must be struggling with the same things, but we didn't have any data. We didn't, all that came later. And I think subconsciously our goal wasn't to help our own family, but it did that.
Yeah.
When you start helping others, you feel great.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't understand that at 19 years old, but then it becomes addictive. Mm-hmm. And you're like, how can I stop this? Like, I want to keep helping more people because I feel great. They feel great. Like, and people just came out of the woodwork.
Speaking of helping others, making you happier, that's a real common theme with a couple of conversations I've had recently, specifically with Angela Douglas. She does a lot of great work in New Albany, food bank, healthy New Albany, everything. And I didn't realize this, but she was saying that therapists are now prescribing volunteerism for especially younger kids. And I was like, I didn't realize that, but yes, like when you do something pure of heart, out, with no selfish intent for another, it really does give you something that you don't get anywhere else. But yet we still have such a hard time, I'm saying in general, volunteering or weaving that into the fabric of our life. It's kind of like this thing that hangs out on the periphery, like a nice to have. Like if I could only have time to volunteer.
Totally. I didn't realize they were prescribing it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, because there's the individual sort of selfish benefit that you get from it, but there's also the community building.
Yeah.
You meet other people, you learn something. If you're curious, volunteering is a great way to learn about a problem or a challenge or an issue in the community. So, I mean, that's awesome. I've always said, like, whether it's AmeriCorps or whether it's Teach for America, or whether like these massive service programs that have sort of grown over time, like if everyone was required to serve for a period of time, post high school, post college, whatever it would be, like we'd be a better society for sure.
The perspective you would gain alone.
Yeah, totally.
Getting out of your own way in the own, this little area here that just wreaks so much havoc. So speaking of your parents, so Diana, I'm kind of obsessed.
Well done.
So I follow her now.
Oh, wow. Her drawings, her artwork.
What do you think she's doing right now?
What time is it? She is a night owl.
You don't think she's awake?
She might be awake.
I feel like we should try to call her. I think she had to be like a tremendous role model, because of what I read. But she's an artist.
She is.
And I think what she's doing is really cool. And she needs more followers. Not that she'd want them, but I feel like people should see her work. And like the script that she does.
I started doing that during the pandemic every day. And I keep telling her, you need to make a book of them. Like, because she was going to stop. And then she was like, but when do I stop? How do I stop? And then she just kept going.
Or does she sell it? Like,
she does sell art.
Because she does the abstracts too.
Right. Totally.
I think that's so great. Did she do that when you were young too? Was that always something you saw? Was your mom being creative?
Oh, 100%.
Like core memories?
100%.
Where did she do her art mostly? Did she have a room?
So in our first house that we lived in until I was 10 or 11, in the unfinished basement, there was like, a whole area. I remember there was like stained glass section. There was painting. And I also remember she was always in the school. Like she would always come volunteer in the art room and help. And then we moved, and then when we moved, she had a studio in the new house. And to this day, they actually live in a condo, an apartment, and she rented another apartment in the building that's just her studio. So she can sort of go downstairs and paint. And a lot of times when we FaceTime her with the kids, she's always in the studio.
Do you have anything in your home that's from her? Yeah.
Tons.
That's so cool.
And in fact, just recently, fortunately, we didn't lose too many of her pieces in our flood because we were worried about what artwork would be ruined.
Well, Diana, if you ever DM me back, I would like for you to create some kind of script. I don't know exactly what I want it to say yet, but I think it's so cool how you have to work to read it.
Totally.
And it's art, but it's very cool.
No, it's awesome.
I'm all about Diana.
She didn't respond, but we can still call
No,
her.
we have, let's try to call her.
Or whatever. I mean, it's up to you. It's your show.
Well, so how about this? Let's give it like 15 minutes.
Okay.
And then if she doesn't respond, we can just continue to stalk her until she succumbs to our wishes.
She'll love it.
That's usually the way that this rolls, Doug. I just keep beating them down. Then all of a sudden they're like, just get her out of my hair.
Awesome.
Okay. So you start a foundation and it was focused on your age group, but was it for everyone or was it just for your age group? Like that was the focus of giving connection and helping people with cancer around your age.
Yeah. Predominantly like 15 to 35.
Okay. And then that's when you heard from Lance Armstrong.
Correct.
And that's when everything started.
Yeah. Wild.
From my pop culture perspective, I mean, we have some Lance Armstrong questions today for sure. So, but when he reached out to you and sent you that email, he had seen something, but that was before he was like Lance Armstrong, right? But did you knew of him?
So I had heard of him because of his cancer.
Okay.
Not because of cycling. Now he was, I'm sure in the cycling world already a big deal. I know that, but he hadn't won the Tour de France yet. He hadn't, This was sort of before his comeback to cycling.
Because I'm trying to get a read of like, if I would see that email come through from Lance Armstrong, I would pass out and like, oh my God, it's Lance Armstrong. But from your vantage point, it was just another guy that had gotten cancer, was kind of reaching out to you, was just kind of cool.
Yeah. At that time I had I don't think it was a wall, like a door sort of in my dorm room where I had posted some articles of other like well-known athletes or people with cancer. And so there was something about him that was like up there, but I didn't know much about his story at that point or much about him.
So he sends the email, and in the email he says, part of it, he says, we're the lucky ones, which hit me like a ton of bricks. And I actually was talking about that with Darcy Wyan. She's a trainer at SOS who also went through cancer. Sure. And I'm like, that just struck me as the type of person that he is, or that sometimes cancer might make you that type of person. You would never consider cancer and luck. I mean, what an oxymoron, right?
Totally.
But man, I mean, what a perspective to have. Like what a perspective to have. I just felt like in receiving that note had to kind of be like, wait a minute. Okay. There's hope.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Especially I think maybe more so at a young age, like looking back and thinking, gosh, I learned so much at 19 that I probably never would have had the chance to experience and learn had this not happened. And again, when you're diagnosed, you don't say, oh, I'm so lucky. No. Like that's not, but it's true. And so, yeah, I mean, it was interesting to get that again in 1997 to have him voice that perspective at that moment was definitely not the norm in terms of things I was getting from people. I think more than anything, what stood out was just like, again, reinforcing like there are other people out there who feel this way, like who have this commonality and who want to do something about it.
We're not alone. Like I'm not alone.
Correct.
And what you were just saying, that this is also a common theme with a lot of these guests who have gone through something really hard, whether it be cancer, child loss, the death of someone you love, all these things, is that when life throws the unthinkable hard, and you go in and you have to get through it. And you're in this dark, like who else has ever, has anyone else ever experienced this? And it's the worst. When you do inevitably make it out, because this too shall pass, there are gifts. And it sounds so weird, but if you allow yourself, once you come out, to see it that way, you truly will get something out of it that you wouldn't have had. And it's the weird thing with this universe. And that's why I feel like there's people with strings up there going,
But it's super consistent. Mm-hmm. And the timing is often very sort of prescient. I mean, my wife and I were just talking about this the other day related to this house situation we had. there have been some significant positive things that have happened as a result. When we found out, we would have never imagined that, but you learn a lot through challenge.
Yeah. Okay. So Lance enters the building and he then sees, okay, well, not only, is Doug a cancer survivor, but he's a super smart guy, can add a lot of value. So next thing you know, you guys are kind of talking about, in your like 3-hour brainstorm about Live Strong. How close were you ever really with him in terms of like, would you call and be like, hey, Lance, dude, I'm feeling whatever today? Or would you confide as friends? Or did you always stay sort of like, if Lance Armstrong is this is Lance Armstrong, were you always kind of snorkeling along the bay superficially and professionally and could never really get in deeper or never even really tried to get? I'm just trying to gauge the closeness of your relationship.
Yeah, no, very close.
You were very close.
Very close. Not initially. Because when I first moved to Austin in 2001, he was still racing for a period of years. And so he would spend half the year in Europe. So those first few years, it was not the same level of friendship as developed over time, but over time, very close.
Okay. Close enough to that when this stuff started to kind of bubble up, you could call him and be like, Lance, like, I need, like, what's up, dude?
Yeah.
And he would say, no, like nothing's up.
Well, we never had that. It wasn't like a direct.
You never directly asked
of like, is this true? Is it not true?
Okay.
There was at that period of time. I mean, there was so much going on that it was almost like in phases. Mm-hmm. And I mean, for me, there was a moment I remember very clearly, which was his former teammates going on 60 Minutes. And when that happened, it was sort of like, like this is all gonna.
I kind of took for granted that he was yeah.
I mean, it was sort of like, that and probably is a problem.
You're like iceberg.
Yeah. And it's, again, in hindsight, you might do things differently and et cetera. But I always talk about it as there was 3 aspects to this. There was the personal aspect, the professional aspect, and the public aspect.
Yeah.
And professionally, you're just trying to keep the organization going, keep the programs, keep the team. Like then you've got the personal relationship, and then you've got the public nature, which is totally overwhelming. So yeah, it was quite a journey. And like you said, you're in the stress of it. It's almost impossible to like think clearly when you're just reacting to things that are out of your control. Like you're not in control of what's going on.
And you definitely weren't. I mean,
No.
you were definitely a bystander. Like, oh boy, how do I handle this? Right.
Yeah.
So then I did read when he finally came in, which I think it took him a minute to come in to like Live Strong to actually address the group. I don't think that was, I think that was kind of lackluster, but at least what I read, did you two have a moment where he was like, man, I'm really sorry I put you in this position? Or was it more about him and kind of damage control? Was there ever sort of a conversation between the two of you? Like, hey,
yeah,
I'd really dropped the ball.
Yeah, no, he apologized to me, and I never expected or needed that, but I appreciated it. And I'll never forget what he said, which was, he said, I've been thinking about the need to apologize to people like in the sport. And then it hit me like I needed to apologize to the people who were running the work, like the mission, work. And so he and I had dinner and he did that. And I'll never forget where we were. And then a couple of days later, he came in and spoke to the whole organization. And I mean, again, at the moment, you don't process it all the way you do years later. And I always say, I don't know what it was like at that moment to be in his shoes. I mean, nobody knows, right? And so you're just sort of taking all this in and you're trying to figure out like how to navigate. And there's no There's no playbook.
No. And I remember watching Oprah. We got to touch on Oprah. So did you watch the whole, like, were you just like glued to the screen? I mean, can you imagine being, I don't care what kind of tough persona you have. I felt it for him at the time and I was so disconnected, but I'm like, man, this guy is on Oprah right now talking about this. Like, this has to be so hard.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's like you can be on the periphery, but I have no idea what it's like to be on Oprah. No idea what it's like to be in that setting as the person. And so it's sort of surreal when you're sort of involved in the whole story on the outside or the edges. And again, it's a period of my life that I'll obviously never forget. And also it was the most stressful, like, few years.
Well, because I want to understand that too, because if I'm you, once I digest, okay, this is where we're at, like that we can't go back now, but then you're moving forward, looking at Livestrong and how do we 2.0 this thing, based on this shit has happened. We can still make this work. And I'm the leader now of how do I do this?
Yeah.
Did you know though, in your heart where you're like, okay, when did you realize I have to move on?
Yeah. I mean, the organization went through various iterations and it was probably a year after that the organization was doing a strategic plan for the next 5 years. And I just realized like I wasn't going to be all in for 5 years. Like it was time for somebody else's energy and somebody else to sort of take it to the next phase. And the other thing is, working with Lance over a long period of time was professionally one of the most amazing journeys ever and can't be replicated. I mean, it just can't. And it would have been inauthentic for me to try in some ways to reinvent that. It was great while it happened and it was time to do something else.
Now, what's your relationship today? Like, could you pick up the phone and call him and be like, what's up, dude? How's it going? Or has there been some space put between?
Yeah. I mean, there was definitely a period of time that was a little bit of space, but he and I are in touch and every so often. And typically, and again, I sort of always come back to this. You had mentioned the email. I mean, the email that he sent at a time when I didn't know much about him, at a time when he didn't know me at all, like the authenticity of that and the authenticity of his cancer story is something that I always sort of go back to. And it's weird to use the word authenticity, in a way, but today, I mean, if he were to reach out to me or I was to reach out to him, a lot of times it's about somebody who has cancer. It's like, hey, I heard about this. Do you know where they should go? Do you think you could help this person? There's a lot of that in our dialogue.
So do you still have your Livestrong bracelets?
I do.
Yeah.
I actually have a box. They used to come in boxes and I still have a full box that's sealed.
And so Nike, did they approach you guys? That was no one could have ever anticipated how huge that was going to be. Those yellow bracelets, like was it $80 million or something that they like?
Yeah, I think it's now about 110 million.
That's like, it's just wild.
It's very wild.
And so cool.
Yeah, it was, again, that's one of those stories that to be even a small part of was incredible. And by no means, it was not my idea. It was Nike's idea. But to be in the room and hear the conversation, and I'll never forget, they initially said, we're going to make 5 million of them and we're going to sell them for $1 and we're going to give you all the money. And most people in the room were like, we're never going to sell 5 million. And there was one person, his name was Mike Sherwin. He was a board member. He's actually from Cleveland. He died a few years ago. Mike was an amazing sort of an engineer and a venture capitalist, private equity investor. And Mike said, you're going to need more than 5 million. And we were like, you're crazy. There's no way. And Mike was right.
Oh, I bought so many of them.
Yeah, totally.
It was such a moment. So when we were prepping for this conversation, we were kind of I'm like, so what other angles can we go down that like people that may not be so overt or that, might be more subtle about Doug Ulman? And you were telling me about your fear of flying.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about this because I shared with you as well that, I don't think anybody loves to fly.
Right.
But like when I was in 5th grade, I was in a plane that's engine caught on fire. And that was like one of my first experiences flying. And so it screwed me up for a long time. And it wasn't until I went to Bali by myself that I kind of like really got, I don't want to say comfortable flying because I'm not, when they shut that door and you're in this little, it's a moment, right? So talk me through this phobia of yours.
Well, look, I'll admit it's a control thing. It's all about control. And I always say if the door to the cockpit was glass, it'd be way better because I could see what's going on. Like I just don't like to not know what's going on. And so I love to travel and I hate to fly. And it's just something I do and it doesn't stop me from going places and traveling, but it's just not a comfortable thing for me.
Are there any rituals or any things you have to do to gear yourself up to fly?
100%.
What are they?
Oh, there's so many.
Because I have a couple
There's
too.
So many.
I have a couple really weird ones.
There's so many.
Like what's one?
One would be I always tap twice on the plane when I get on.
So do I.
So
Wait
wild.
a minute. So do I.
Wild.
Twice.
Yeah.
I have to.
I don't know why.
And then do you ever think to yourself, because no one's looking at you, right. But I think that every single person behind me is looking and thinks I'm crazy. Right. So I try to be real subtle about it. Like I'm just stroking it very softly.
See, I always pick up my bag on my left shoulder. So my right hand's available to I'm just like blocking that.
So I do a Hail Mary and a Our Father on the way, like up through. Cause I'm like, somehow that's going to be,
right. Of course.
A thing.
Control. You're in control of your.
Yes. What's another one?
Oh man. So, on takeoff.
Okay.
As soon as we start going down the runway, I count to 180.
Mm-hmm.
Because the vast majority of issues happen in the first 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm. And so when I found out like that, it's the most dangerous is like the takeoff and the landing.
Right.
That's not good. I get real, like I have to like, and then once I lose control though, once the turbulence gets to a point, I lose all sense of like common sense. It's going down.
I've met more people on planes because when it gets turbulent, I just like look around. I'm like, who can I connect? Who can I chat with? Who can I? Yeah. And sometimes people have looked at me without even saying anything and they can see, they're like, oh, it's okay. It's okay.
You can just feel the energy.
Yeah.
What about the story about when you were on the plane with Bill Clinton? I think that's a funny one that we need to share.
Yeah. So we were traveling in Canada. I don't remember which cities, but at that time, Lance and Bill Clinton were speaking at a series of leadership events, motivational talks. And one day we were going from one city to the next and Bill Clinton said, hey, you guys can fly with me. I was like, great. We get on this plane. It's probably an hour flight. And Bill Clinton is holding a cup of coffee. And he did not take a sip of the cup of coffee the entire flight because just holding court, chatting. And we hit what most would describe as a bump that was like a 3 out of a 10. Nobody else even noticed. But he clearly saw the look in my face. He was sitting, I'll never forget. And he looked over at me and he said, Doug, you've had cancer 3 times. We're going to be just fine. And I'll never forget that.
And did you try to act cool or were you like, okay, you got me?
Well, of course, I'm like trying to disguise all of the anxiety that's in my body. I'm like sweating, the whole thing. But I'm like, I want to hear what he said. I want to be part of this conversation. I don't want to miss this. And so it's like such a distraction, the anxiety or the like fear. But I have a soft spot in my heart for Bill Clinton because when I was diagnosed with cancer, my brother at that time was working for him. And I got a package in the hospital from the White House from Bill and Hillary, signed note. We're thinking about you, framed in my house. And, it's things like that you never forget.
That guy, man, he's a likable dude, isn't he? For everything he's been able to, not that he got away with it, but he really was able to kind of skate through that. And he's got some charisma.
Yeah. Charisma. And he gets his energy from others. Like he needs people to be around. Like he wants to host, he wants to talk, he wants to sort of engage, and which is a great quality.
Yeah.
But there's lots of flying stories, lots of, one of the things that I always beyond grateful for is Lance asked me if I would go with him years ago on a USO tour to Iraq and Afghanistan. And so I said yes immediately. And I went home and I told my wife, and she was like, that involves a lot of flying. And over the course of 10 days, I think we did 40 or 50 flights. I mean, helicopters, big planes, small planes, I mean, all over. And, those are the types of things like I can't allow it to hinder, because I learned so much about the military and met so many amazing people and saw firsthand what this country was dealing with and service. And so a fear of flying is like a silly thing, in comparison to things like that.
Because you think about who do you know that has like won the lottery or has been in a plane crash? Travis Barker. And he, from Blink 182 was actually in a plane crash, which is wild to think. And he still I believe he still flies. And I can't imagine the rituals that guy, well, actually he may just be like, well, shit, I mean, lightning can't strike twice.
Right.
Or can it? But
it's totally unreal. I mean, it's if I had $1 for every person on an airplane who said to me, oh, it's safer than driving, I'm like, yeah, it's not, it's irrational. It's totally irrational.
It is irrational, but God, it's so weird to think that you're all up there. And then I think how much the luggage weighs. I mean, I go into some real
here's
dark
the thing.
places.
Here's the thing that a friend of mine shared with me a couple of years ago. He asked me the question. He said, do you know how many commercial flights there are a day in the United States alone? And I thought, no, I have no idea. 20,000, 40,000, 50,000. And he said, it's between 100 and 150,000.
Really?
A day. Every single day. And then he said, and do you know how many have crashed in the last 10 years? He's like, that's millions of every day. Like right now, there are 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 planes in the air right now.
So hopefully you and I will be okay.
We're good.
I'm hoping.
I'm not worried. We're good.
So back to the presidents. I just look at what we've got going on both sides right now. And I just kind of wish there was, I asked Suraj if he'd want to run for president when he was here the other day. Cause he was like, after I got done talking to him, I'm like, well, you know what? We may want to sign up.
Right.
I'm thirsty for someone that I can feel really comfortable with. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we need great leaders. And I guess one fear is that people won't want to serve.
Yeah.
There's so many reasons why people will walk or run the other way. And I think that is not great for our democracy. Mm-mm. You want the best, most talented people to want to do this in some way. And I don't know that we have that right now in terms of people running towards public service. I have great admiration for people who are willing to serve because it's hard. Mm-hmm. It's getting harder every day. I think there's leadership characteristics that I think are important. One, you need to be able to inspire. You need to be able to sort of lay out a vision that people can buy into. And two, I think you need to have empathy and you need to have humility and you need to I don't think those characteristics are different for a president versus a CEO versus they're just sort of things that are probably critical to being successful. And if you want to unite people, you have to be able to inspire.
You're hired.
Yeah.
I have an idea. So you run for president. Suraj runs for vice president.
Perfect.
And I think we could really make some shit happen. I mean, come on. This is the lab where it's all gonna. It all started on the Carrie Croft show.
You get all the credit. Back. You get all the credit.
Thank you. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted. Let's see if your mom responded.
All right. Let's see. She will answer the phone wherever she is.
It's an age thing.
Hello.
Diana.
Yes.
How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm well, thanks.
Well, this is Carrie.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm sitting here with your son.
Hello.
Good morning, Doug.
Good morning.
So I was telling Doug that I've followed you on Instagram, and I'm so impressed with your artwork. So I'm like a new.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm a new fan of yours.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, and I was
I'm honored.
I was like, Doug, how can I purchase one of these? Like, if I give your mom like a sentence and have her create it for me, I want to put it in my office or in my home.
Oh my gosh, I love that idea.
Yeah, so I'm gonna. Should I Facebook message you?
She sent you a direct message on Instagram, but you never responded to it. So we're not sure that you know where to find direct messages on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
And see up on the right-hand side, there's a circle with it looks like a little lightning bolt.
Yes.
Okay, so it's right next to the heart.
Okay. Yes.
Okay,
there it is.
Do you see like a red? Is there a notification there?
Yes.
Okay, click on that.
Okay.
And that's where people leave you messages.
Oops.
So Diane, I have a question for you about Doug.
Sure.
Okay, so what was Doug? What was Doug like as a kid?
Very easy. Very easy and very fun. He was happy and friendly and calm, although very much wanted to be on time for everything, and I'm not always.
Some things never change.
He was
if you're on time,
you're on time and I'm not.
If you're on time, you're late.
It's so true. It's so true.
Well, I guess I'm just that's where I land.
I have a lot of people that listen to this show who are in the throes of parenthood. And so if you had to look back, like what did you and your husband talk about? Like, okay, well, we're going to raise our kids and we're going to make sure that we weave in this value, whether it's one, like, did you have one specific value? Did you have a handful of non-negotiables where you're like, I don't care if it kills me, these kids are going to be X, Y, and Z?
The most important ones were that everyone has value. And I guess the basics of treating people the way you want to be treated and with respect. I know that both Doug and Ken got it, but I'm not sure who they got it from or where they got it from, but they got it.
Doug, what do you remember most growing up about your mom in terms of how she raised you?
Just beyond supportive, beyond like invested in whatever we were invested in. If we wanted to do something, they'd support us to do it, and never told us what to do, never said you got to do this versus that. Like, let us explore and sort of go in whatever direction we wanted, and then did everything they could to set us up for success, which was amazing.
Well, job well done, Diana. If you don't mind, I'm going to put your website out on my social media because I think people should see what you're doing. And I'm going to...
Oh, thank you.
I'm going to reach out to you, and pretty soon I'll have something of yours in my home.
Amazing.
Oh my gosh, I would love that.
All right, Diana. Well, thank you so much for answering the call.
My pleasure. Thanks for calling.
Of course.
Right. Bye. I love you.
Love you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Doug Ulman, this has been loads of fun. I hope that you had fun
awesome.
today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for playing along and letting me meet your mom and all of that. Any closing words, whether it be about Pelotonia, anything for the future, any nuggets of wisdom that you want to throw out into the universe?
Nuggets of wisdom.
Little tiny little breadcrumbs of wisdom.
I think we're so fortunate to be in a city, in a community, place where people want to do great things. And if every person just tried to do something that brought more people together, the world would be an even better place. And that's what we're trying to do. I
agree with you. And that reminds me of one thing too. You said something about the difference between community and crowd. And that stuck with me. Can you say that again? Because I think people need to hear that.
That's something that I learned from my parents. And they always used to say, you should try to build community in everything you do. And they said the difference between a community and a crowd is that in a crowd, people push and shove and elbow and try to get ahead of the person next to them. And in a community, people embrace and smile and shake hands or hug, and they know that none of us get to move forward unless we all move forward together.
And it sounds like, oh yeah, of course, right? It sounds logical.
Totally.
But I would task everybody out there to really think when you're by yourself, whether in your car, like you wake up at 3 a.m. and you're staring at the wall.
Right.
Am I the kind of person that has the scarcity mindset where I am elbowing and pushing and shoving,
Totally.
or am I inviting other people to the table for a collective win?
Correct. And it doesn't mean you can't be competitive. Doesn't mean you can't be motivated. Doesn't mean you can't.
No.
But anybody who's been on a team or been in a classroom or been part of an organization like Pelotonia or anything, like we can't cure cancer research one person at a time. You have to do it together. Mm-hmm. Like the big, bold, audacious goals have to be solved together.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that's a great note to end on. And for all of you out there who are still listening, follow your girl on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, stay cool and keep moving. Cool.
Well done.